Why does the United States pay higher drug prices than other countries? Because America's the only country in the world where 340B hospitals mark up drug prices and PBM middlemen charge billions in hidden fees. Meanwhile, Americans subsidize the research and development for new cures. Other countries benefit, but don't pay their fair share. Crack down on the middlemen. End the free riding. Lower drug prices. Go to balancethescales.org to learn more. Paid for by Pharma.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. From improving emergency response times to protecting against cyber attacks, local, state, and federal governments are innovating with Google AI. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American Innovation.
This show is going to be a little bit of a mea culpa. But first, I'm going to rewind the clock.
In terms of flashing red indicators, nothing beats what is happening at America's largest port right now.
This tape is from back in May. At the time, the head of the Los Angeles port had started making the rounds on cable news. This is MSNBC.
Just give me a snapshot in time, a today story of what is happening at the Port of LA.
Fewer vessels coming across the Pacific with less cargo. It was pretty quiet out there when I started about 6 o'clock this morning.
The story this guy was telling was simple. Because of the president's tariffs, trade with China was coming to a screeching halt. And the rest of us, he implied, should be bracing for impact. Do you remember this moment?
Yeah.
You're like, do I have to remember this moment?
No, I'm just like, if you want to talk about economics, call an economist, not a guy who runs a port.
Justin Wolfers is an economist, which is why I called him. Because we actually ran a show about this whole port brouhaha while it was going on. We titled it, Yes, the Shelves Will Be Empty. And if you've been into a Target recently, you know how that prediction played out. Sorry about that. Anyway, I wanted Justin to explain what we'd missed. He told me the first problem with our analysis was a misunderstanding of just how dire things would have to get for basic goods to essentially vaporize.
So if you took one of my undergraduates and you said, if we were going to subtract a lot of goods off the shelves and demand was unchanged, will the shelves be empty? And my students would say that when the quantity demanded exceeds the quantity supplied, people will bid up the price, or sellers will understand that they're about to sell out. So anytime a supermarket sells out, it's made a mistake because it could have sold the same amount of goods at a higher price.
So, okay, the markets would have priced in scarcity way before that scarcity actually materialized. Check. But there was something else we couldn't have predicted, but know all too well now. Trump always chickens out. At least at first.
The Liberation Day tariffs mostly haven't been charged yet. They're about to be imposed on August 1st.
Are you sort of hesitant to raise the alarm now? Because August 1st is coming? No.
My job is to look out the window and say, holy shit, this is really bad. If he does this, it will be very, very bad. My job is to say this is an incoherent, destructive, unhelpful set of policies that will hurt us in myriad ways.
I think where my show, other shows, got into trouble back in May was we were trying to make what's happening with the economy legible to people.
Yes. Yeah.
And we're trying to say,
right.
Here's a thing you'll notice. But actually what's happening is very illegible to most people.
So far. When tariffs are 20% and everything you buy is more expensive, that'll make it a lot more legible. But right now, the tariffs haven't been imposed in any ongoing and systematic way.
Today on the show, with yet another tariff deadline looming, You may be wondering what is up and what is down with the economy these days. Justin Wolfer says, don't worry, you'll find out soon enough. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states. Wouldn't it be great to manage your portfolio on one platform? Well, now you can trade all in one place on Robinhood. That means you can trade individual stocks and ETFs and also buy and sell crypto using seriously powerful and intuitive tools at one of the lowest costs on average without needing to manage multiple apps. Robinhood makes withdrawing and depositing crypto seamless. Send crypto to your Robinhood account or send crypto from your Robinhood account to other wallets without deposit or withdrawal fees from Robinhood. Trade all in one place. Get started now on Robinhood. Trading crypto involves significant risk. Crypto trading is offered through an account with Robinhood Crypto LLC. Robinhood Crypto is licensed to engage in virtual currency business activity by the New York State Department of Financial Services. Crypto held through Robinhood Crypto is not FDIC insured or SIPC protected. Network fees may apply to crypto transfers. Crypto transfers may not be available to all customers. Investing involves risk, including loss of principal. Securities trading is offered through an account with Robinhood. Financial LLC, member SIPC, a registered broker-dealer.
Justin Wolfer says the first thing to understand about Trump and tariffs and the wider economy is that the whole way we've been thinking about this stuff and talking about it and reporting on it is a little bit wrong. Take the tariff deals the administration's beginning to make. He says they're not just trickling in slowly. In the media, they're often framed in a way that makes it seem like the U.S. has really figured out some economic problem, when actually they haven't. Take the agreement that was announced last week with Japan.
They got called by a bunch of journalists saying, oh my goodness, the president has negotiated tariffs with Japan down from 25% to 15%, which is absolutely wrong. The president inherited an economy in which there were virtually no trade barriers between the US and Japan. Average tariffs in both directions were about 2%. The president threatened to impose a 25% tax on Americans who import goods from Japan. He walked away from that 25% threat to now deciding that he would tax the Americans 15% for importing goods from Japan, thereby solving about 1/3 of a problem he created, but leaving 2/3 of it in place. He also, by the way, doesn't need to meet with the Japanese prime minister in order to decide how much he wants to tax Americans, which is what he's doing.
Are the usual economic indicators that would tell people, the general public, how things are going, working? I'm asking that because back in April, when the tariff announcement came out, stock market's like, whoa, not loving that. But I feel like there's been a numbing effect in the last few months. I don't see Wall Street responding to the chaos in the way that I might expect it to if businesses were legitimately freaked out. So can you explain to me what's happening there?
Yep. So let's say there are 3 buckets of types of data about how well the economy is going. We'll talk about hard data, soft data, and financial data. Okay, so hard data is when we go out there and we say, what's rolling off the production lines, how many people are employed, what are they making, how productive are they? And it's usually produced by the government. It's incredibly high quality. It's wonderful. Okay. In the first quarter of this year, gross domestic product fell. When total output in the economy falls, we think of that as a recession. No one called it a recession, though, and I think they were right not to. What happened? Well, in the first few months of 2025, everyone knew tariffs were coming. So what did they do? Well, if you needed to buy a new washing machine, you knew now was the time to buy it. If you were worried you might need to buy a washing machine later in the year, you might decide to buy that washing machine now instead of then. And if you ran a business, for instance, if you were, there's a local store here that sells T-shirts, many of which come from China, you might stock up now because you're worried they're going to be 30% or 135% more expensive in a few weeks' time. And so you'll stock up ahead of time. So what happened was imports surged enormously. So people started buying ahead of the tariffs. That actually really distorts data in a number of ways, one of which is directly in the month you're buying, this shows up as a lot of buying activity.
And that looks good.
It looks good, but it's not productive activity in the United States because you're buying stuff made abroad. Usually production and spending move in the same direction. And so many of our economic indicators are actually on spending, but what we care about is American production. And so now this drives a wedge between spending and production. And so our spending indicators are no longer useful indicators for production.
Is there an economic indicator we should be looking at that's actually still effective?
So given those distortions, you might think, oh, let's go look at the soft data. What is soft data? It's when we just make surveys and we go and ask people, how confident are you about the economy? Do you think now's a good time to spend? We ask CEOs, do you plan to invest in new capital equipment? Anything about the future. Just ask people what they think.
What's that telling you?
The worst.
Huh.
Horrible. Now, sometimes you get a headline which is consumer confidence bounced back last month. But when you bounce back from horrible to terrible, the headline should say consumer confidence is terrible, not consumer confidence rose. So you've got to keep your eye on when should we be thinking about a level and when should we be thinking about a change. Now, don't you wish you took Economics 101?
I really do. I really do.
So exciting. It is so exciting. So the soft data make you incredibly pessimistic.
But you also see this disconnect. And so it's a little bit of choose your own adventure data. Yeah?
You know how I sort of told you the Trump tariffs broke how we think about the hard data? President Trump broke soft data. That sounds weird, but let me explain. If you go back in history, for the last 50 years, surveys have asked Americans how they feel about the economy. And it turns out back in the 1980s or 90s or whenever, if you ask people, what do you think the economy will do over the next year? They would answer you. They'd say, well, I think it's good, I think it's bad, and so on. Trump came down the golden escalator. And ever since then, we have become profoundly polarized as a country. And so now when you ask people that question, if it's a Republican in the White House, Republicans say the economy is marvelous. And if it's a Democrat in the White House, Republicans say the economy is terrible. And vice versa for Democrats to a slightly lesser extent. And so I think what this tells us is people are no longer answering the question sincerely about what they think the economy is going to do. Instead, they're effectively saying, they're answering as if the question were, do you like the guy in the White House? And so that then tells us the soft data are not useful anymore because half the people, in this case Democrats, always think the economy is terrible. So now I told you the hard data is broken, the soft data is broken. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Economists often look to financial data, by which I mean stocks. This is why on Marketplace, Kai Rizdal always says, let's do the numbers. So why do we look to that? Well, the reason is when you buy stock in a company, you basically are buying the right to get dividends for the next 1,000 years, for as long as that company exists.
I think of it as colder data. It's data that's about like getting a payoff. And so it's theoretically less emotional.
Absolutely. It's calculated data. But the other thing about it is it's forward-looking. The stock market is not the economy, but it is a metric for how optimistic or pessimistic are we about our economic future. And this is where you were right to say earlier, Mary, this has gotten to be a very interesting story. So in the first 3 months of the Trump administration, every time Trump announced a new policy that he was trusting his instincts, higher tariffs, for instance, stocks would tank.
Yeah.
Every time. Completely unbroken record. And then the new word taco came along. Trump always chickens out. Now, I'm not sure Trump always does chicken out, but people on Wall Street convince themselves that Trump always chickens out. And so what has happened is the same pattern has persisted, which is every time he announces a new tariff, stocks fall. But they fall by a lot less because people don't believe the president.
So are you saying the whole economy is run on vibes right now?
Vibes is I don't know the right word. I think we're steering in the dark, right? I think we're steering through fog. Deep, deep fog. The fog is the chaos and the uncertainty all around us that has distorted all of our economic measures to such an extent it's extraordinarily difficult to know what the way forward is. So, as advice for your listeners, anytime someone tells you with enormous confidence that the economy is either going to do well or poorly, you're talking to a charlatan, because any kind of certainty is simply unsupportable in the current moment.
After the break, how Trump's threats to Fed Chair Jerome Powell play into this whole economic mess. This episode is brought to you by Built. If you are paying rent every month without earning anything in return, consider joining Built. It's a rewards program designed for renters who want to earn something for their largest monthly expense. By paying rent through Built, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed towards hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. But it does not stop there. Built is about making your entire neighborhood more rewarding. You can dine out at your favorite local restaurants and earn additional points, get VIP treatment at certain fitness studios, and enjoy exclusive experiences just for Built members every month. Built is turning a monthly expense into an opportunity to earn rewards and discover the best that your neighborhood has to offer. Your rent is finally working for you. Earn points on rent and around your neighborhood wherever you call home by going to joinbuilt.com/whatnext. That's joinbilt.com/whatnext. And make sure to use the unique URL joinbilt.com/whatnext. This episode is brought to you by Quince. With summer in full swing, do you ever feel the urge to refresh your closet but not waste money on pieces you're only going to wear once? For timeless, elevated classics that feel luxurious, check out Quince. Quince sent me a few of their clothes to try out, see how I liked them so I could tell you how it all works. They sent me this shorts and shirt set that are super cute. And I gotta say, I have really been wearing them every day. They're olive green. People tell me I've got sort of a safari chic thing going on. You can check it out at quince.com. The deal with Quince is that they work directly with factories and cut out the middleman so you can get clothes without as much markup. It's stuff like 100% European linen tops starting at $30, washable silk dresses and skirts. It's the good stuff. So, give your summer closet an upgrade with Quince. Go to quince.com/whatnext for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/whatnext to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/whatnext.
Wouldn't it be great to manage your portfolio on one platform? Well, now you can trade all in one place on Robinhood. That means you can trade individual stocks and ETFs and also buy and sell crypto using seriously powerful and intuitive tools at one of the lowest costs on average without needing to manage multiple apps. Robinhood makes withdrawing and depositing crypto seamless. Send crypto to your Robinhood account or send crypto from your Robinhood account to other wallets without deposit or withdrawal fees from Robinhood. Trade all in one place. Get started now on Robinhood. Trading crypto involves significant risk. Crypto trading is offered through an account with Robinhood Crypto, LLC. Robinhood Crypto is licensed to engage in virtual currency business activity by the New York State Department of Financial Services. Crypto held through Robinhood Crypto is not FDIC insured or SIPC protected. Network fees may apply to crypto transfers. Crypto transfers may not be available to all customers. Investing involves risk, including loss of principal. Securities trading is offered through an account with Robinhood. Financial LLC, member SIPC, a registered broker-dealer.
So one of the few institutions that, to me, seems to be taking Donald Trump seriously and trying to engage with his words and his actions seriously is the Fed. And I want to talk to you about that because as last man standing, I feel like the Fed has also become a target for the president. Can you just explain how Jerome Powell, the head of the Fed, has started talking about the economy and how that has gotten tangled up with Donald Trump? And whether you even agree with my assertion that he's kind of like last economic man standing.
I would say he's the last coherent man standing. So just some background. When Trump came to power, there'd been a tradition of reappointing Federal Reserve chairs who had done a good job. And Janet Yellen had done a good job.
This is back in 2017.
Yes. Janet Yellen is also about 5'2" and female, and so does not look like she comes from Trump's version of central casting. So despite doing an amazingly good job, he fired her, and then he appointed a Republican by the name of Jay Powell. Jay Powell came to power, did a good job. Joe Biden reappointed him. The same Jay Powell is still doing a good job. In fact, subsequently, after the pandemic, so the pandemic has done little lasting damage to the US economy. Someone between Joe Biden and Jay Powell deserves enormous credit for that. So yes, I admire the man. But Trump has a property developer's instincts and thinks always and everywhere interest rates should be lower because it would stimulate more business. And so Trump has said more recently, and also Trump likes to punch, and he's been punching Jay Powell. I don't understand the logic of it, but that's what he's been doing.
When Justin says the president has been punching Jay Powell, he means Trump has waved around a draft of a letter he says he might use to fire Jerome Powell, even though doing so seems to be illegal. He means Trump's called Powell stupid. Trump has even alleged that Powell is wasting money by renovating the Fed's offices at taxpayer expense. Last week, Trump went down to the Fed in person to take a look at those renovations, with Powell by his side. And when a reporter asked if there was anything Chairman Powell could do to get the president off his back, Trump said this.
Well, I'd love him to lower interest rates. Other than that, what can I tell you? The country's doing really well.
This was almost a laugh line. But Justin says the important thing to keep in mind is that this whole interest rate battle, it's deeply tied to the president's tariffs. Jerome Powell has said again and again, tariffs are the reason interest rates are holding firm.
He has done it in a way that's as apolitical as possible. So he's not out of his lane talking about this because his job is to keep track of inflation and unemployment. And it turns out the biggest force that will drive inflation and unemployment over the next couple of years is going to be tariffs. He's not said once tariffs are a bad idea. I have. Tariffs are stupid. I suspect I'm not going to be Jay Powell's replacement. So he simply acknowledged the reality that every economist alive has acknowledged, which is higher tariffs will raise prices. And when prices rise, we call that inflation. And in addition, higher tariffs might lead to slower economic growth. And the combination of those, he didn't use this word, stagflation.
Which is every economist's worst fear.
Yeah. And essentially, the current stance of policy is this is the biggest shock happening to the US economy. He won't use this language, but this is my interpretation. Therefore, I'm going to wait till the White House figures out what the hell it's doing, and then I'll respond. And I think in February and March and April, this is a totally reasonable policy, which is if you're going to do high tariffs, I want to see that before I raise or lower interest rates because I want to see what that will do to the economy.
In a way, it feels like calling a bluff. It's like, okay, you're going to wait, we'll see how that plays out. And then we're in this weird in between.
I think you're giving it too much drama. I want to make the case it's actually more boring, which is if your job was to steer the economy and one guy wants to knock it off the rails, you'd say, you go, and then I'll figure out how I'm going to respond. And I think that was totally defensible, but that's frustrated the hell out of Trump. Now, actually, it turns out it may be the case that Trump never settles on what his policy is. Like we're coming up on August 1st. He promised us 90 deals in 90 days. He got essentially zero. He then gave himself 24 more days to send out 166 tariff letters. In the first 7 days, he got very excited and sent out 25 of them. Then someone said the word Epstein and he suddenly got bored and has literally sent out 0 tariff letters over the last 2 weeks. And I just want, if folks I think they're listening, not watching this, my eyes just bugged out. It's beyond staggering. They got bored halfway through disrupting the global economy and walked off. And people might say, well, the Epstein thing puts a lot on their mind. Your Treasury Secretary and your economic nerds and your trade policy wonks, I sure as hell hope have nothing to do with convicted sex offenders or any of the political fallout around that. These nerds should be sitting down looking at economic numbers and coming up with one number for each country and allowing the mail merge to continue. So I have no idea how they literally got bored in the middle of a trade war and left it half done. Anyway, that's what happened.
Yeah.
If that's what Trump is going to continue to do for 3.5 more years, then this idea, Trump moves first, then Powell moves, will eventually have to change. But at the moment, we have an August 1st deadline. It would be crazy to make monetary policy different in late July when we're going to get clarity by early August.
Yeah. Trump has talked multiple times about the potential of firing Jay Powell because he calls him too slow. He says, I want you to lower the interest rates. You're not doing it. You're too slow. Got to get him out of there. There was this talk. He had a letter he was showing people in Congress, like, here's my letter. What do you think if I fired this guy? The Supreme Court has said, you can't fire the guy. It's very, very up in the air. It's like more of that chaos you've been talking about with the tariffs, just with Jay Powell.
And pointless chaos.
But what does that do inside the Fed? I mean, you're saying there's basically an impossible situation, which is Jay Powell has said, like, okay, I'm the janitor for the economy, so I need to wait for the mess to happen and then come clean it up.
Yeah.
But instead, there's sort of this like ongoing mess that's like not definitive, not ending, and so he's just sort of still waiting at the sidelines. What does he do now? And then also he's being threatened with being fired.
Right. So this is the thing I find most frustrating. So I don't share the president's economic objectives or political objectives. But what I dislike the most, because I'm a nerd and a technocrat at heart, is if you're going to do a stupid thing, at least do it efficiently. And what we have is stupid things being done ineptly. And it's the ineptitude that's actually incredibly expensive. For instance, if he doesn't end up firing Jay Powell, then all of this nonsense, you and I having this conversation, people in financial markets reevaluating the future of the US, will be for naught. Now, you and I can have conversations all day. That's fine. But what he's signaling is, even if I don't fire him, I'm the sort of guy who thinks about firing him. Now, if I was thinking about lending money to the US, one of the most important things is, do I believe that this is going to be a country run by a serious regime that's committed to low inflation and that will repay its debts and that won't inflate things away, and the economy will be run the way first world economies typically are run? Whatever happens at the end of this, he's put in the minds of financial markets the possibility he may do something stupid. That then leads them to lend money to us at higher interest rates because they're pricing in the risk we're doing something stupid. For your listeners, that means your tax dollars, rather than building more roads, are going to go towards paying higher interest payments on our existing debt than we otherwise would, because it's the metaphorical equivalent of the president ruining our credit rating.
So you're saying that Jay Powell can't even fix Donald Trump's mess, even though Donald Trump is saying, why won't you fix my mess?
I'm saying that if Trump were to take over the Fed, Trump couldn't get the outcomes he wants. He would just create another mess.
Huh. So you're leaving me in a bleak place here.
Yeah, I know. I feel bad about that. So do you want to talk about something really cheerful? I don't know what.
What do you got?
I saw a YouTube video of a sloth the other day, and it was so funny.
I'm sad that economists have been driven to the same things that I am driven to.
Look, see, now you're looking cheery already.
Here's the thing. I think if I'm looking as a non-economist at the economy, I could tell one story about what's happening right now, which is that the economy is resilient in the United States in some way.
Yeah.
It's being buffeted by winds, and it's standing tall.
Mm-hmm.
I could also tell another story, I think, which is that the economy is pliant to what Donald Trump is doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
What is the story you would tell?
I think both of those are true. And I also think there's enormous uncertainty. So, look, if this economy keeps growing through this, we learn something about how incredibly resilient the economy is. In fact, way back in February, I shouldn't admit this, but I wrote a New York Times op-ed in which every liberal in town was saying the economy is going in recession straight away. And I was like, guys, it's being a little melodramatic. Look at the data. The economy's growing fine. I'm going to wait for things to turn south before I call it terrible. And then we saw an avalanche of bad economic policy, but it's possible we continue to do well through bad economic policy. And I would celebrate that as much as anyone. I also want to take a step back, and I want to urge people to look at the right economic indicators. So what gets all the news and what everything we've been talking about is what economists call the business cycle, the ups and downs of recessions and booms from year to year, right? You and I haven't so far said anything that extends beyond the year 2026.
Yeah.
And the difference between a boom and a recession, it can feel really dramatic, but actually in terms of GDP, it's quite small, maybe 5, 6, 7%. If you look instead across countries, the difference between the United States and Argentina, and the difference between Argentina and Burundi are enormous. So the difference between a successful and an unsuccessful economy is about 100 times larger than the difference between a boom and a bust. It's so big.
So are you saying we have a long way to fall if the economy's going to head into a cliff, off a cliff?
Wow, that's one really pessimistic way of saying it. I think what I was urging, and yes, and actually, let me tell you a story. If we go back 100 years ago, you looked at the richest countries in the world. They were the United States, Britain, Australia, Canada, and Argentina. Most of those countries continued with a relatively coherent government and implemented useful economic policies and continued to grow and are very rich countries right now. One of them is not, Argentina. Argentina had revolutions and debt defaults, and it's basically bumbled from one crisis to another ever since. And Argentina is relatively poor compared to those other countries. So when we say a rich country can't fall from grace, they can. It happened in Argentina. Now, notice I just talk about developments over the course of a century, so it won't happen overnight. But the reason I wanted to focus on these differences across countries, or even to tell the story about Argentina, is that it's not about the ups and downs of the business cycle. It's about the deeper foundations of prosperity, the deeper economic and political institutions. And those in turn are also what made Burundi so poor that much of the population is hungry. And so if you really care about the development of an economy, you'll very quickly understand that those deep institutions, a deep trust, for instance, that if a business were to invest, that it will be left alone and it will be able to reap the benefits of its investment, that if you were to give money to your alma mater, the alma mater would be able to keep that money rather than having it taken from them, that we compete in markets, and when we compete in markets, we make sure the best product wins rather than the product that's being hawked by the guy who has more mates at Mar-a-Lago. And it's those deep things that really matter.
Justin, I'm really grateful for your time. Thanks for coming on the show.
This is fun.
Justin Wolfers is a professor of economics at the University of Michigan. And that's the show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, Ethan Oberman, and Madeline Ducharme. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Go track me down on Blue Sky. I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.